back. So this afternoon, I want to talk a little bit about exposure to violence and mental health. And I want to begin by just drawing some data from our own work before we introduce our guests this afternoon. So for Belize has the highest exposure to violence in the Caribbean as measured. I know people are shocked at that. They have over 80% of the children who live in Belize City have seen a dead body and are exposed to direct violence because of the small size of Belize City. It's just over 6 square miles. It's really, really tiny. Jamaica is over 50%, and Trinidad is 40-odd%. And when you look, if you understand violence, just the exposure, not just direct violence, I just giving you the data for direct violence, is also something called indirect violence. So you see it on the news, you see it in the media, you hear of people singing about it, and so forth. And these things can lead to mental health issues. Here to talk a little bit with us about it is psychologist Dr. Leahcim Semaj. My brother, how are you doing?
Alive and well, sir. Alive and well.
Yes, man.
That's why you let you know that chair, well, technical that you're sitting in, I sat in that chair in 1992. I was the first midday talk show host for Power 106.
Right. Okay. Good.
So the beat goes on.
I follow great people, you know.
The relay, it's a relay, and they hand over the baton,
It's a baton, yes.
That's right.
Yes, man.
Yeah. Listen, the issue about stress, anxiety, fear, mental health, that interesting cluster. There are two kinds of realities that we have to deal with. Now, the smallest reality is called immediate contact. Those are things that you come in immediate contact with. And you were mentioning about people seeing dead bodies. But my estimate is that 90% of what we come in contact with is not immediate, is mediated.
Right.
Now, you see, there's a word in the middle of both of those things, media. Mediated. Meaning that we read about it, we hear about it, we see it on television and so on. And you see, oftentimes we spend a lot of time just talking about the immediate contact issues. But the largest contact issues that we have for all our experiences are mediated.
Yes.
Just think of all the things that you know. It's not because of personal experience. You and I can sit and talk about Cuba, Nicaragua, El Salvador, but how many of those places that we have actually spent time in? But we have had mediated contact.
Right.
Now the same thing now with this thing called violence. People who, the more media a person consumes, is the more awful they think the world is. Right? And then that clearly affects their anxiety because there's I hate to even say the term, but for much of media, if it bleeds, it leads.
Yes.
If it bleeds, it's you. And good news is not news. So then every time there's a gunshot, every time there's a killing, the media amplifies it. And there's again an expression I use. One of the role of the media, unfortunately, is to take the worst of us, impose it on all of us as if that's all we were. Now, when
because the good things don't get sold.
No.
Because supply created a demand, and the demand is now for violence.
Exactly. For that, now think about the visitor, the American or Canadian who comes to Jamaica. I've been to Jamaica 10 times. I really enjoy Jamaica. I can tell you one thing. When they're in Jamaica, they don't watch Jamaica news and they don't read Jamaica newspaper.
Yes.
So that the Jamaica that they experience is that incredible part of Jamaica. That really is the bulk of Jamaica.
Yes.
But the mediated aspect of Jamaica would give, and that's why even Jamaicans abroad, we don't have to go so far. Oftentimes, many people like you come from country, have a view of Kingston. Lord God, you're not afraid of Kingston, man. You know, people kill you.
Did you know there was a time when the wholesales would open for country people at 6 o'clock in the morning?
Yes. Because they
coming to Kingston,
run in and run out.
Wholesales, and by the time the wicked people come out, they're gone back to country.
Exactly. And then if we add to that now, there are a minimum of media options in Jamaica that literally understand their role in national development. It's more the role in national anxiety production and fright.
When we were doing a class at SOAS called the Entrepreneurship of Violence, and media, security forces, and some other groups were put in the whole idea of how do you sell violence?
Yes.
How do you make a buck off violence?
Yes.
Yeah.
So then part of what I am doing now, a lot of stuff is helping people and organizations to deal with, pandemic fatigue, pandemic anxiety. And one of the components of the 10 is when you go home in the evening, you need something to bring you down gently. Yes. More music, less news. If you're really anxious here about the news, I say read it online or even glance at the newspaper, because you can consume it at your own level. You can glance at it and wince and you turn away, or you look at the details. But then the gory details that especially television feel it has to do to really excite you and get the adrenaline flowing. I think that's a big component. Now, the other aspect of the mental health impact of violence, all right, we all know about the individuals who are directly impacted, all right? You were held up. Your mother was shot. You were robbed. But then think of all the relatives of those people. All the people in the same community as those people. They are also impacted by it too. But then now the mediated aspect of it now, all of us are impacted by it. And it takes its toll. And they mentioned fear and anxiety.
Right. There's an area that I want us to discuss a little bit. And it's something that seems to be emerging in my students' data. The fact that a lot of persons who are vaccine hesitant have now given reason that they've seen so much data on vaccines that they have no idea what to do. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Beautiful.
I'm 21%. 21% in these are small data.
Yes.
We're finding 1/5 of persons who says, "Boy, I have no idea what to do because it's just so much data," and the end result of it is that you can't tell what they're saying.
All right, let me tell you. I'm glad you used the term vaccine hesitancy, and I am probably one of the first, if not the only person who has described vaccine hesitancy as a behavioral disorder. A behavioral disorder, because we've had vaccines for well over 100 years, and we've always had a level of 5 to 10% of anxiety/resistance, but nothing like this.
Yes.
And the reason for this now, we've just come out of 5 years of things called alternate facts. Alternate facts. And persons using the highest office in the world and the most powerful media options in the world to ridicule science and to distort information. Now, the average person does not have the capacity to do analytical work.
Right.
Now, let me go even further. We talk about cognitive development. Where by about age 12 to 15, person's supposed to achieve formal operations where you can think like a scientist. Boss, I honestly believe that the majority of our people in Jamaica have not achieved formal operations.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they can so be easily conned and so easily with just like
and that's why I describe them as limbic rather than cognitive.
Beautiful, because the limbic system is the alternate brain.
Yes.
Is the alternate brain. Is the automotive.
When the thinking brain fails, the limbic system never fails.
No, that lizard brain, the original brain.
Yes, man.
So they never get to the analytical brain. So that you're easily swayed by whatever is the more recency and primacy.
Yes, man.
And if you notice, like Donald Trump, the last person who talked to him, or the first person who talked to him, are the ones that influence him the most. Right? No.
You know, a quick one. I think it was 2016 election. I was on the road and I saw a young man saying to me, "Sir, I'm going to vote." So I said, "Yeah, all right. So why?" "My brethren told me to go vote." I'm like, "Huh?" And then I realized that there's a lot of people in Jamaica who go to vote because the brethren say, "Hey, you're going to vote for Shandal and you're going to vote for Shandal. A good boy."
Exactly.
They don't ask why is he good.
No.
Right?
So whatever. So even when you are opposed to ask them a question, what the answer is, it is not a reason they have given. It's a rationalization.
No.
It's a rationalization.
And that's why pollsters can get it wrong a lot in Jamaica.
Easily. That limbic. I really hope that what you have just said.
2016 election was won in the last 2 weeks, you know.
Absolutely. Because of that limbic brain.
13 days. It took the JP 13 days to surpass the PNP.
Yeah.
13 days. We tracked that election right down and we were in shock watching this adolescent society just turn over.
No, but again, my brother, if you look at, you tied it into, I'm coming back to the vaccine hesitancy thing, but look at the proportion of our population that after 5 years of high school leave with 5 or more subjects. We're talking about less than 12%.
Hold on, from the doc. We're coming right back to it. We're going to take a quick break and come back.
You're listening to Pearl 106 FM. The time is now
1:30.
Hello, boys and girls. The Gleaners Children's Zone is back in school. Get your weekly Smart Start for all ages. Pep lesson for grades 4 to 6, plus literacy and numeracy for grades 1 to 4. Parents, ignite your child's mind, education, and inspiration in every publication. The Gleaners Children's Zone, supporting you for more than 70 years. For more information, call us at 876-932-6188 or 876-932-6288 or contact your school.
And I know good, conquer evil. Living in the positive.
Hey, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. All right. So we're talking with Dr. Leahcim Semaj. He's a psychologist, and we're at the point where we're discussing the matter of the proportion of Jamaicans who transition to even qualify for university. The data are, Doc, 70% of our students, just over 70% of our students attend schools called new secondary schools, and only 10% of them will qualify for university in their first go. Eventually, 32% of them, about a third of them, will actually be trained. But we're talking about 90% of 70, meaning that 63% of Jamaicans who leave a high school will not qualify for university.
And you can add a little more to that. Coming from that same route you're talking about, that new secondary, so much of our cognitive capability is established before we reach age 10. So I talk about those who came up the long route. So things like mastering the language sometimes never occurs. Do you know, you any class, he's not you ask, how much is half times half? and you'll hear from them. You'll hear a shout, one. Because and because they never learned that from third form.
Yeah.
They never learned that from third form.
Simple principle.
So now back to the original issue about the vaccine hesitancy, and because of the bombardment of information, because the amount of information people now have via social media, via media, via friend and company, and the lack of capacity to process it, the brain uses shortcuts.
Yes.
Cognitive shortcuts. So that's why the whole process of conspiracy theory are so beautiful.
Oh man.
Because they give you something that is sexy, that is believable, and guess what? It's usually a series of unconnected but probably rational facts, but they're mixed together with a secret sauce.
Yes, man. My favorite is the one that is going to make all Jamaican men impotent.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes. So that's
and then the person who told me, I said, do you have any friend at all who's taken a vaccine who has a baby on the way? You know, so I never did think about that.
Exactly. Back to the limbic brain. The limbic brain focus on the most visible. So, by the way, I will send you my article on the process. I've identified 12 cognitive biases. One is the illusions of causality.
Yes.
The illusions of causality. You and I, because of our training, we know that this is a basic term. Causality. Correlation is not causality.
No.
Correlation is not causality. That don't mean a thing to the average Jamaican. Not exactly. No, because of this, here are the 2 or 3 of the components that I suggest we can use this to our benefit to save people's lives. I presented this to SMA, Spectrum Management Board, a couple of weeks ago, and they tested it and it worked. In that they had a vax list, and they were the first person to do this. They offered each person that came a KFC voucher and a phone card. They got 180 people. All right? Including some of their own workers who were totally against it. They did it 2 weeks later and had over 800 people.
Yes, man.
Over 800. Now,
yes, man.
Here the explanation for this. Back to your original premise. Because most persons who are vax hesitant do not have a good, quote unquote, reason to be there for. Right?
Yes.
They don't have a good reason. Them doing it because what? Back to the limbic brain thinking. Give them a good reason to take it. What's a good reason? Might as well do something, get their free food, you know. Because KFC is an important cultural component. And you mix KFC and phone card.
Not to mention, I want to give it the two phone card.
Oh, yes, because that means you can call your girl, you know, and tell her, may I bring some KFC for you, you know.
Yes, man.
Huh? 2 boxes are tick. You can call your girl, may I bring you some KFC, you know.
Yeah.
No, it sounds trivial, but what I'm saying, because the reason for being vaccine hesitant, as you're saying, there's cognitive overload. And when the cognitive overload, right, it's making no sense to you.
So if it's not based on anything that is real, it's just based on a clog, then you can unplug it.
Unplug it. And KFC works. So
just one sniff.
The smell of it alone. The smell of it alone.
Yes, man. Yeah,
you know,
man.
so
clear the nostrils, man. Clear the sinuses.
Yeah. So that we are the mind. So when we talk about from where we started in terms of violence, just feeding people, you know, there are 2 kind of things we can sell people, you know, to move them. One is called hope, and the other one is called despair. Guess what? It is easier to sell despair.
Mm-hmm.
But it is harder to sell hope. But it is hope that will, if people.
Ontological security.
Yes.
You know, the advantage of ontological security, though, is that within 15 years, everybody can see the difference. Every single group of people I have, policymakers I've worked with in this world, who have sold to people ontological security, from the black on black violence in London when I was there, to Trinidad, to Belize, every person, every group that has sold to young people ontological security, hope, those countries have done.
But listen, that is. But let's bring it down to the individual level. My first 14 years of life was spent below Torrington Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I walked to Central Branch Primary. I walked to KC.
Okay.
But guess what? My mother provided that ontological security.
Yes.
My mother told me that the only chance I have in this world is education.
Yes.
And I believed her. And not only did she tell me, she did what she could in her own little way.
Mm-hmm.
She took me to the junior library and sat there and left me there all day.
Even if she didn't have the cultural reference point of experiencing it for herself.
No, but she knew the library is a good place for your child to go every, right? Yes. And I remember something else she said. I remember being interviewed by Ian Bowen, and but boss, when you go over them kind of places, how you had the violence and the bad man? I said, I had no experience of that. Why? Two things my mother said. One, we only live here. We don't belong here.
Mm-hmm.
You understand me? This is just a place we live. We don't belong here.
You just sleep here, so.
And she tell me that when you come home from school, go in the room, because all that time is one room was my residence. We live in one room. Mm-hmm. And go in the room and do your work. And if I come home from work and anybody call your name in the yard, tenement yard, if it's not you, it's you.
Mm-hmm.
If it's you, it's W. Them shouldn't even know your name.
Even if I saw.
Yes. So don't get no. So that ontological security, it can be sold, because if we're not selling that, we're selling the spirit. Lord God, you see where we live. We're not mountain, nothing, you know. Nothing good can come out of here, so you know. So do you know that my best friend, when I was going to primary school, invited me to his house one weekend. No, we're talking about in the 60s now, you know. He used to live on Stanton Terrace.
Right.
You know, so them days Stanton Terrace was uptown.
Rich people place.
When I went to the man yard, Mr. Boss, it's a football field you live on. The front lawn big like a football field.
Mm-hmm.
The next week.
Remember that Bustamante's house would have been just up the road.
Just across the road, right? No, the next weekend, I had the audacity to invite him to my house for the weekend. But guess what? But by the way, he was almost white Jamaican, you know. His parents allowed him. I had no shame or no nothing. Me invite him to my house. His parents allow him, and him sleep on my like a single bed. Yeah. So I never had the boy. I get home and live, you know. No. I reciprocated, because they invite me to their house. I invite them to my house. So that talks about that ontologically of security. You can sell it. You can sell people the options that we can do better. If not, you sell despair. No, here is how bad things are.
The other day I had a major clash with a very good friend of mine. When I said very good, she's a very good friend of mine. She was selling to a younger female that, you know, there are no chances here, nothing, woman's life hard, and so forth. And I couldn't take it any longer. I stopped her. I said, in a country where you are 228% educated of men, you have no chance here. And I dished her out all the advantages of women. and why Jamaica is actually a very good place for a girl to be, despite all the violence. And the girl said, that's true. And I said, listen to me, no, you can't cuss me, but I couldn't have watched you any further. And I find it in politics, I find it in gender, I find it in a whole range of places where people just stay on the negative and then ignore the fact that the positives are present and that the positive had longer positive effect than the negative.
So in despair as opposed to hope, because the same data you mentioned, the data set goes deeper. We have 7 all-boys schools, high school, and 14 all-girls schools.
15.
15 now. And the co-ed school are at least 60% female.
Yes. The most are about that. I think the average is 56%. So, and then, of course, the new secondary schools, the ones that are called Tier 3 and Tier 4, have over 60% males. Now, in a setting like this, in a setting where Jamaica is now has the 6th widest gap between males and females, and have the 2nd widest gap between males and females in education participation, and the 3rd widest gap in ontological security in the entire world, you have a woman, a senior woman, who's my friend, sitting a young girl down and feeding in her paranoia and absolute depression. And I just couldn't take it.
That's the reality.
Because for me, I have no problem with her being a feminist. I have no problem with her telling the girl that there are hard times. I have no problem. But when you paint a dark picture that does not exist, I said, since you are my friend, and I was invited into the conversation, let me tell the girl that is not true. That if she gets up in the morning and be positive about life, there's a lot she can achieve.
And to make matters even worse now, we'll go beyond media and hope or media and despair. There's a whole new barrage of YouTube channels that take news event and they remix it to make it even more dreadful. Even more dreadful. There's a whole, it's incredible the number of those YouTube channels now that will take media events and no fear for libel laws or so on. You add anything to it and you make it more dreadful. So we need hope.
Yeah, we have to start making sure that our children and our family and our friends begin to see more wholesome things so that we can get out of this rut.
If I can share one idea, do you have a minute?
Yes.
The first time I tried to do a radio program on the problem of housing, how hard it is to get a house and how people need housing. One of the first call I had was a young woman. She was 26. And I said, Dr. Semaj, I don't know what you're talking about, I own my own house and I'm 26. I said, how you? She explained to me that she used to work at Free Zone. And then she realized that if she can sew so fast and make so many things so quickly, she can do it for herself, but she would need a place to do it. So she went and talked to the bank manager about to get a little money to get a little shop. The bank manager made her a brilliant suggestion. Look, there's some houses going up, some townhouse. I can assist you with the bam bam boom. And why don't you pay them a little townhouse? You live upstairs and downstairs is your factory.
That's right.
Downstairs is your factory. And she took him up on the idea. And she told her friends, I don't want none of you come to my yard before 6 o'clock in the evening because I'm at work. And she would get contracts to sew uniforms so she can do the bulk work. After about 6 months, she take on one person to help her do buttons and those things. But she owned her house. That shifted my own mindset. I started a program called Home by 30. Now, that program, I did that program really for about 5-6 years. Till to this day, I'm running into people who say, Dr. Semaj, you is not one, it's 6 houses owned now, because the average Jamaican don't understand how you own a house and we have to start early and what you start with and so on. A listener taught me that.
Yes, man.
My brother, strong.
Blessings. Always a pleasure having you. Blessings.
The pleasure is mine.
All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, everyone. We'll soon come back.